The Italian island of Poveglia, also known to the locals as the Island of Ghosts, has a long dark history full of tragic events going back to thousands of years. During the Roman Empire, the island was used to house victims of the plague in order to protect the rest of the country, forcing infected people to live and die in isolation. Then during the medieval era, when the plague returned and killed off nearly 2/3 of Europe's population, Poveglia was once again called upon to take in the sick and dying. In many cases, the bodies were burned. Communities even got into the habit of shipping away anyone who showed the slightest signs of illness. Many of those people had not actually been infected with the plague at all, and were literally dragged to Poveglia and dumped atop piles of rotting corpses. Sometime after the island had become a quarantine station for ships arriving at Venice in the 18th century, a plague was discovered on 2 ships. The island was sealed off and used to host people with infectious diseases, leading to legends of terminally ill Venetians waiting to die before their ghosts returned to haunt the island. The terrifying negative energy that has been left in the wake of these deaths remain even in the island's very soil. Poveglia Island still happens to be home to thriving grape vineyards. As well as thrill seekers, the only people who dare to visit the island these days are those who go to seasonally harvest the fruit. It's said grapevines must do well in the soil because it had been said that more than 50% of the island's soil is composed of human ash. In 1922, the island was utilised as a hospital for the mentally ill. This brought on droves of mentally disturbed patients to the island and only served to enrich the legend of it being a place to avoid. The isolation and privacy offered by the island also allowed for disreputable scientists and doctors to do as they pleased to their patients. Reports of widespread abuse and heinous experiments began to float back to the mainland, bringing with them the screams of the tortured souls trapped there. Legend tells of a particularly demented doctor who worked at the island's mental hospital in the early 20th century. His barbaric experiments on patients are still shocking when told today. He believed that lobotomies were a great way to treat and cure mental illness, so he performed lobotomies on numerous patients, usually against their will. The procedures were heinously wicked and painful too. He used hammers, chisels and drills with no anesthesia or concern for sanitation. As his experimentation continued, it is said the doctor began to suffer his own mental torture and was pursued by the island's multitude of ghosts. Eventually he lost his mind and climbed to the top of the bell tower and flung himself to his death below. There are varying accounts of his death, though some say he may have actually been pushed either by an angry island spirit or by some of his furious patients. Locals to this day claim that the doctor's spirit is still in the tower and will remain there forever, and that on a quiet night, if you are listening closely, you can hear him ring the bell tower. The patients and staff finally abandoned the island in 1968. It has remained unoccupied to this day except for allegedly a population of tormented ghosts. The remaining buildings, a hospital, church and a shelter for boats, are crumbling away with time. Visitors to Poveglia have been forbidden for decades. Of course, that doesn't stop the occasional thrill seeker from taking a boat over to the island. Some look at it as a dare, others are genuinely interested in experiencing a bit of the paranormal. However, all who venture there return shaken. One thing visitors report experiencing is the sensation of being watched. Others report being scratched and pushed down by invisible forces. Some entities have been said to push visitors into walls or chase them down corridors. Upon entering the abandoned mental hospital, the illegal tourists report a heavy sense of dread descend around them, followed by a deep voice that's warned, "Leave immediately and do not return." The visitors immediately complied. When the mental hospital in Poveglia was finally closed in 1968, the island was sold to a private owner. However, he did not have it for very long before selling it to yet another owner. In both instances, the new owners could not bear to spend time there. The atmosphere was heavy and morbid. Strange sounds combined with all the hauntings that had been reported continued to prevail. As a result, the island was left completely abandoned. It has come up for sale again, but the deals continue to fall through. For an island of so much beauty, it harbours a dark, sinister past. One can only hope that these restless spirits will find their peace amongst their overgrown trees and shrubbery and the buildings frozen in time.